Hi, I'm Simon Hill, and you're watching Purebred Reds Adelaide United Fan TV.
Are you after the latest and greatest football kits, boots, goalkeeper gear, teamwear, accessories, or equipment? Look no further than South Australia's very own soccer specialty store, Soccer Locker. An Australian owned and operated business, the store is located at Shop 5 of 181 to 183 Grange Road, Findon. Founded in 2012, Soccer Locker was introduced into the market to fulfill all the soccer-related needs of Australians, providing a huge range of quality clothing and equipment ranging from soccer balls, team kits, goalkeeper gear, accessories, and much more. As well as stocking all current football merch from your favourite overseas teams, recently arrived stock also includes stunning retro kits from some of our favourite past eras as fans of the World Game. So get shopping now at our Findon store, open from Monday to Friday and open Saturdays from 9am to 3pm. Or visit us online and take advantage of free shipping from across Australia at soccerlocker.com.au.
G'day guys and welcome to the Purebred Reds Adelaide United Fan TV. I'm your host Ellis Gelios. We're coming to you with a preview of our Saturday blockbuster against Western Sydney. It's an away game and I'm joined by a man that played 58 games for Adelaide United from 2008 to 2012 and is an Asian Champions League winner with Western Sydney Wanderers. I speak of course, Daniel Mullen. Daniel, you've just recently been engaged. You're at a club that's won 3 NPL titles in a row. You are winning in life at the moment, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a weird year last year, that's for sure. With everything that went on with COVID, but yeah, to say I'm happy at the moment would be an understatement. So yeah, like you said, engaged. Just started a new job here as a teacher at St. Peter's College, and yeah, doing really well with Campbelltown as well. So can't complain.
You sure are, and you're looking very sprightly in your St. Peter's apparel there, and we'll get into a little bit about that later on. But before we do so, we're just going to preview our game against Western Sydney, obviously a game between two of your former clubs during your A-League days, Daniel. So it's a 4:35 kickoff this Saturday, guys, at Bankwest Stadium. If you aren't travelling, make sure you tune in to Fox Sports or the Kayo Sports app. As always, no squads at the time of filming. So let's get straight into it. Daniel Mullen, a 3-2 win against the Mariners on Friday night for Adelaide United. Many will say it was a fortunate one, obviously with the intervention of VAR. Did you watch the game and what were your thoughts on the performance overall?
I did watch the game. I actually watched it with Craig Goodwin, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. A bit of a family connection there now. We watched it together. It was again, it was a very odd game. First of all, I think the quicker we get rid of VAR, I think the better. I've experienced it as a player playing, and couldn't stand it as a player. And then as a fan now, watching the game, I equally dislike it. I think I heard a podcast, the Peter Crouch podcast. I heard them talking about the VAR, and they made an excellent point, which I hadn't actually thought of before. But the biggest reason why people love football is the emotion of scoring a goal. So, you know, you score a goal as a fan, nothing is bigger or better than that. And what the VAR does is it takes away the emotion of scoring a goal. So fans will be at times reluctant to celebrate because they don't know if it actually is a goal or not. And at the same time, players as well are reluctant to celebrate because they're not sure if it will actually stand as a goal. Now, it might seem like a small thing, but for me, that's the biggest part of football. You know, the emotion of scoring goals. You're taking that away. Let alone don't even worry about the rest of the problems in terms of you know, subjectivity and all that. But yeah, just the emotion that the VAR takes away, I think is one thing that needs to change. I think they need to get rid of it as soon as possible. And you know, you asked me what the game was like. To be honest, that was the only thing that I could that I was thinking about after the game was the decisions, how the referees handled those decisions, how the VAR handled those decisions, which we shouldn't be talking about. We should actually be talking about the game. It wasn't a bad game by Adelaide. I thought Central Coast are actually playing really well at the moment. And I think Adelaide is in a position at the moment where they're not playing bad football, but they're not creating too many chances. I think that was pretty evident with the game last week.
I don't think you're going to have many fans disagreeing with you about either of the major points you've just made there. What is interesting is that it's not the only time we've seen a blockbuster happen at Cooper Stadium between Adelaide United and Central Coast Mariners. You were involved in one all the way back in 2008, a 3-3 draw. We actually went 3-0 up during that game as well. It was, funnily enough, the week before your breakout game against Bunyod Kor in the Asian Champions League semi-final, which no one will ever forget. Obviously, the occasion where you marked Rivaldo, and you've spoken on this show actually about all the emotions you had leading into that game, which was a fantastic insight. So tell us your recollections. I don't think you're involved in the actual game. You're on the bench, unused sub, but crazy times nevertheless. And again, the Mariners all the way back then.
Yeah, I think back then, before I even made my debut for Adelaide United, sitting on the bench training with the team, it was probably the most nervous I was, because there was that unknown, not knowing if I was good enough, not knowing how I would react to playing in front of Highmarsh Stadium, a full crowd, which you get the sense of the occasion when you're on the bench, how big it is and how loud the fans are. So there's just that unknown of, well, am I going to freeze out there? Am I going to succumb to the pressure? So a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, and obviously didn't get on in that game. But I can remember most games that I was even sitting on the bench for. Back then, Central Coast Mariners were the team that everyone hated to play against. I remember they were always very physical. They could match you in a 1v1 duel all over the park. So you knew that you were coming up against a tough team. They also played a 4-4-2 system. So as a defender, as a centre back especially, it was a nightmare to play against. I still don't like playing against a 4-4-2 because basically you get no time to relax on the ball. You're always under pressure, and the two strikers at the time, I remember there was obviously Matty Simon, who's funny enough, is still there now. And then they always had, big, strong strikers that just worked hard.
I think it might have been Sasha Petrovsky even.
Yeah, I think, Sash was a tough player to play against. And I think, if you look at the teams now, a lot of those big, strong, physical players, they don't tend to exist as much anymore. We look now, there's a lot more youth in the teams. There's a lot more pace, but physically, I think we are nowhere near as big and as strong as we used to be. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'm not too sure. But it certainly was different back then, and that Central Coast team were very good for a number of years.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on, obviously you're a defender yourself, had a fantastic A-League career as a defender. Concerningly, we've shipped 11 goals in our last 4 games, which really is quite appalling. We've only really changed one player from that back 4 since last season too. So there's really no excuses there, to be honest with you, Daniel. And you were a part once upon a time of the most rock-solid defence this club's ever had back in 2008. In that season, we conceded just 19 goals in 21 games, which is absolutely amazing. And I've got to ask you, what on earth has gone so badly wrong, and how do we fix it?
Good question. You're right. I was very fortunate to be surrounded when I was young with some of the best defenders in Australia. Mickey Valkanis, he took me under his wing when I was first starting. When I was on the bench for Adelaide United, Mickey Valkanis he was the club captain, but then he was starting to get dropped here and there. And what he would do is we'd always be on the second team together, and he would coach me. A lot of the time, the second team would actually play with less numbers than the first team. And I used to always think, this is rubbish. They're always scoring goals. And I remember him always, he would come up to me and he'd grab me and he would say, hey, this training that we're going to be a part of right now, this is invaluable. because now we're learning how to defend against being outnumbered. So he used to walk me through, positioning, making sure that the spaces between the defenders are always small, and likewise between the lines, the midfielders as well. And he taught me a lot. Then obviously you had people like Ange Costanzo as well. You had Sasha Ogonoski, you had Robbie Cornthwaite, just some, unbelievable defenders. And we worked really hard at training, week in, week out on our positioning and making sure that the basics were done well. And we all knew where to be when we didn't have the ball. And obviously when we had the ball as well with that rest defense. So at the moment, it seems to be, we had a lot of leaders, a lot of experienced older leaders who really didn't care if people hated them in the team. Not that they did. We had a great team camaraderie. But a lot of leaders directing, and I think at the moment, with Jakobsen out as well, I think that leadership might be a factor in why they're conceding so many goals.
And how best do we fix it? Is it a case of like Jakobsen coming back and just restoring, the familiarity everyone has with one another, or does Carl really need to consider maybe, Yared Abachu playing at centre back? Obviously, we've seen him on a few occasions at right back for the senior team, but he is naturally a centre back. There's a few other options there as well. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I think firstly, whenever we used to concede a lot of goals in matches, I remember Robbie Cornthwaite blowing up once in a video analysis, and we just conceded a number of goals in a game against Melbourne Victory, and we were getting smashed by the coach, by Vidi, saying it's not good enough, and then I remember Corny blew up and he said, well, hang on a minute. He goes, yeah, we're the defenders, but have a look how these goals are actually starting in. And it wasn't always the defenders, that were at fault for these goals. So it really is a team. It's a collective. I think to change one or two defenders at times can be an easy fix. That fans or supporters might look and say, well, they were closest to the ball. It must have been their fault. But there's so many times in a game where the midfielders might be too far away or out of position, which is exposing the defense, or the strikers are pressing individually. I'm not saying that's the case, but there's a lot more to it than just one or two players in a system. So to fix it, look, Carl's a great coach. I know Carl well, so I'm sure he's on the training track working really hard with the team, and trying to figure out how they can best work together so that these holes aren't appearing in games, and then obviously the individual mistakes as well. I've always been told that the most important part of the pitch is both boxes, so you have to be clinical in both boxes. Defenders can't make mistakes in their box, and obviously the strikers need to score in their box, and that's where games are won and lost. So I think a bit of a mix of those two things.
Interesting to see how it all goes against the Wanderers. We've shipped a fair few there in recent seasons, so I'm not the most confident going into it, I've got to say. We're going to switch our focus to the future now. Daniel, Craig Goodwin, I'm sure a name you're quite familiar with. After the spirit shown by the team to overcome the Mariners last Friday night, plus the added prospect of a star winger rejoining the squad, do Adelaide fans suddenly have a bit to be optimistic about going forward?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think Craig is one of the best attacking players we've produced here at Adelaide United. I think when he played last, so 2 seasons ago, the amount of goals that he was creating and scoring was pretty significant. I think what else it will do is it will give someone like Tommy Urich a bit more confidence as well. I think having someone to release the pressure off of you in that top third, you can see at the moment, Tommy is trying his heart out. You can see it, the effort he's giving, and he's trying almost too much. I know it's easy to say, but he's got one or two players always constantly thinking, well, he's our biggest threat. We got to make sure that he doesn't score. Now you bring Craig into the team, all of a sudden, the focus has now, been turned away from Tommy, and all of a sudden Tommy's finding a little bit more space, a little bit more time, a little bit more freedom, which will give him a bit more confidence. So it's a double effect. Obviously, you're going to get the quality with Craig in the team, but at the same time, you're going to free up, your Ben Halloran's, your Tommies, and then your young players as well that are coming on that are so dangerous with their pace.
Yeah, very interesting to see how that's all going to sort of pan out, because a lot of fans have been observing that Tommy Urich has been quite isolated up there so far in his second tenure at the club. Now, I want to ask you about this new number 10 that's supposedly on their way to the club. We don't know a lot yet. No names have been mentioned so far in the mainstream media or in any of the traditional rumour mills that go around. Assuming we do land a number 10, Daniel, how should this midfield take care of itself? Because we've seen Carl switch formations since the start of the season, trying the 4-4-2 now, and it seems like that's the way forward. But obviously a new number 10 coming in is going to create more options for Carl. Does he go back to the midfield triangle, and how should it all work?
Yeah, and it completely is up to the type of player that Carl signs. So this number 10, if he's a number 10, but he's a box-to-box number 10, then, you can play a flat midfield and you can have that 4-4-2. But if it's someone like a Marcos Flores who comes in and he's, creative, and he's probably not going to work as hard as Mark Milligan, for example.
Yep.
Then for sure you're going to have to change the system to adapt. And then you're probably looking at a 4-3-3 with two holders, 2 6s, and you've got the players there that can play those positions as well. It really does depend on the player. I mean, you choose your formation based on the players that you have available. That's all, what I've always found has worked for the best managers. You don't change the players to try and fit your system. Yeah, until we find out who the number 10 is, it's too hard to comment really on what type of system they can play.
So let's assume it's a playmaker coming in. If it was up to you, you've still got Stefan Mork, obviously. Should he be playing with 2 6s anchoring, or 1 8 and a 10 and a 6? How should that work?
I think Morky offers too much to be an anchoring 6. I think if that was the case, you'd be able to have this new player as an out and out number 10, and then you'd play with an anchoring 6. It might be a Coletti, someone who's just going to control the midfielder. It might be the new Spanish player who played as a right back, Lopez. So someone who's just going to sit in front of the back four. And we've talked about how Adelaide are leaking goals at the moment. Such a pivotal position is that number 6, who is not going to go wandering and trying to get in the box and score goals and going out to the right and left side of the field. That number 6 just needs to control the game. Isaias was, the perfect number 6, because he just sat in between the centre backs. He protected the centre backs and let the other midfielders do their bit. So, if that was the case, you could then have Morky playing as more of an 8. So, not a 10, but, getting forward, releasing with his press, but then getting back and supporting the 6 as well when needed, and letting the 10 just be creative and trying to get into those little pockets between the midfield and the strikers and the defenders. Sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Let's discuss the Wanderers, our opposition, obviously, on Saturday, a club you played 15 games for, and as we mentioned from the top, an Asian Champions League winner, which is extraordinary. There's not a whole lot of them going around in our backyard in SA at all. They're starting to look as though they're getting some identity back about them under the new manager there, Carl Robinson. Would you agree that they're heading in a positive direction after years and years of underperforming?
Yeah, I think since Popper left, they've been trying to find themselves. I think Popper took the club into a direction that was where he wanted the club to go, and as a result, they became one of the most successful clubs in Australian history. Obviously, you've mentioned the Champions League, and I don't think that should ever be forgotten, because to be able to do that. We almost did it with Adelaide United, where we made the final. But yeah, great achievement. And the club was just, so successful on the pitch, but even off the pitch. I remember rocking up to games, and the RBB would be in full force and singing and marching down Church Street to the game, and the stadium was just electric. It was one of the biggest atmospheres in Australian sport, not just football, but in Australian sport. And I think they've lost that a little bit. I think Carl Robinson, from what I've heard from his interviews, he's trying to create a culture there that is, it is about the person first. So he's trying to bring in people that fit the vision of the club, of his culture. And obviously they need to be decent players, but first and foremost, I think he's trying to mold individuals into the type of people that he wants at the club. And you can see on the pitch they're looking happier. They're looking a lot more free, and they certainly respect him. You can see that as well. So I think it will be a tough game this week for Adelaide.
Not many players still there from back when you were at the Wanderers several years ago. Do you still keep in contact with some of those Asian Champions League alumni that you had in that time? And have they sort of commented on, what they think the issues have been at the Wanderers, and whether it's all looking like it's, going back in a direction that Popper sort of had it in, that they were sort of culturally serial winners? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't speak to the boys as much as I should. I had some great mates in that team. One of my better mates who I actually lived with over there was Gogo Mabratu, who has just signed back at Brisbane Roar.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see how he goes this season, because what a talent he was. He was one of the best attacking players I'd seen at training ever. He was amazing, skillful, fast, but just unfortunate with injuries. Went over to Europe and haven't seen him since. So I'd love to see how he goes this season. But the problem with the players that left Western Sydney is Popper tended to bring in a lot of players and work them to their limits, and then almost every year turn over, a good 10 to 12 to 13 of them, those players. So a lot of the players that left don't really want to speak about their time at the Wanderers anymore. I found my time there was amazing. I loved it. But, same thing for me. I left with a pretty sour taste in my mouth as well, because I still had another year and a half left on my contract. So the club was amazing, brilliant club, but probably don't speak to the boys that were there enough anymore. Like you said, I don't think there's anyone there that was there, that's there now, that was there when I was there, except for maybe a few of the coaching staff. Mm-hmm. Labi Haliti, I know, is still there. Dean Heffernan, Megzi, Michael Beauchamp are all there as coaches. But in terms of players, I think everyone's moved on.
Interesting stuff you have pointed out there, particularly with the news that we just had this week in Greece concerning Popper in the second division with Xanthi FC. Looks like there's not going to be any Asian Champions League reunions on the card at the Wanderers, which is obviously very unfortunate. But we'll move on nevertheless, Daniel. So let's talk about Joe, a man that does not need any introduction, really, known by everyone in South Australia and always will be, a product that we can really sing our praises over as a state. He left Campbelltown after the 2019 NPL Championship win. He's now back at Adelaide United as the assistant of the W League team. The W League side, as many people will know, have never qualified for the finals since their inception back in 2008. Joe Mullen comes on board and suddenly they're on track to make the finals for the first ever time, and we don't want to jinx them there. What can't this man do?
No, I think you've been very nice. I think firstly, Adrian Stenter, the head coach, has done a fabulous job. To think that, I know he's a full-time teacher as well, to be able to do that and then obviously commit to, the trainings and the games that he does with the W League squad. I think, hats off to him. It shows the determination, the passion that he has for football. And I know that Dad's really enjoyed it this season. I think it was something that he wanted to do because it's something he's never done before. And I think that they've just they've done well this season. I've been to I've watched most of their games. I've been to a few of their games as well. And they're a good team to watch. They've got some, from what Dad's told me, the actual the girls in the team they just want to learn, and they want to improve, and they want to be there. They want to be better. And he said it's a joy to work in that environment. So I think you've been very nice saying that he's played a huge part, but certainly I think he does raise standards. I noticed that even with myself when I came back to Campbelltown, my standards increased from years in the A-League. So it's not to say that just because you come back to NPL level, for example, that you're going to it's a walk in the park. For me, I actually found it, I was working harder. I had more accountability on my shoulders, working under him as a coach, which was really refreshing, to be honest. Refreshing to see that there's other coaches out there that aren't in the A-League that are actually at a very high level. And we've seen that this season with all the young coaches that have stepped up into the A-League, like Brisbane's Warren Moon, is it? Warren? Yeah,
Warren Moon.
I think he's done a fabulous job. So there's a lot of young coaches out there that have the potential and the ability.
So is it more of a mentoring role that he has in the setup there with the W League?
Yeah, I think it's it's a mentoring role, and he's also there just to support Adrian. So I know that Adrian is the one that puts on the sessions, and it's it's his decisions, and then Dad's there as a mentor, sort of a wise head to bounce ideas off of.
Well, good luck to everyone there in the W League setup, including your old man, the great Joe Mullen. Let's talk about you at Campbelltown, Daniel. By far the most successful NPL club going around the grounds these days. 3 straight NPL championships. It doesn't look like anyone's going to get anywhere near you guys anytime soon. And I know you'll play that with a straight bat and tell us all the usual cliches about how there's always competitors and teams that recruit well. But we'll get into all of that. First things first, I want to ask you about Ian Fife. Obviously, another legendary defender from his A-League playing days at Adelaide United. You spent 2 seasons with him as a player at the club. I want to know what your relationship is like with him now that he's the full-time coach at Campbelltown.
Hasn't changed at all. So Fifey was, I think he came to the club, what was it, 5 years ago or so?
Yeah, 13-ish, yeah.
Yeah, so he's won a lot of trophies there. And when we talk about, Carl Robinson trying to create a culture, I think that's what Dad tried to do when he came to Campbelltown. I think he tried to bring in people that were first and foremost good people with good morals, good work ethic. And obviously most of them were also very good players, but there's a lot of players as well that he wanted to bring in that you could have questioned in terms of their ability. Why would you bring someone in like that? And it was to develop this culture at the club. And I think Fifey played a big part in that. So he was one of Dad's first signings when he retired from A-League, or when he came back into the A-League, but when he decided to step down from the A-League. And he's been brilliant for the club. So last year we had Phil Stubbins as the coach for the majority of the season. He left, I think it was about 9 games to go, there or thereabouts. And then Fifey stepped up with Les Pogliacomu. And Corey Artoni as well has actually come on board as one of the assistant coaches who was very successful in the NPL with Metro Blue Eagles. So Fifey sort of took on this role without any coaching experience. And it would have been extremely tough for him last season. But he managed to keep things keep things simple, which is often one of the most difficult things to do. You always look at coaches or people in general, and you think, why didn't they just do the simple thing? The simple thing would have worked, but a lot of them will, try and change things or put their own stamp on things. And Fifey kept things very simple, and we were able to regain form because we weren't playing well at all. We regained form, and then we ended up winning the championship. So for his first season as a coach, couldn't have got any better, I don't think. Probably should have retired after that, 1 from 1. But yeah, now he's come on as the full-time coach. So it was only interim up until the end of the season. He's come on now as a full-time coach, and I was contemplating finishing playing as well. At the end of last season, I got offered to be the assistant coach for the Adelaide United youth team, which I was extremely close to taking.
There we go. There's a bit of a scoop.
Yeah, extremely, really, really close. And basically the only reason I've decided not to is because no team in the NPL has ever won it for 4 years in a row. So I thought, why not give it 1 more year, and also just getting engaged and need the money. So play better than Adelaide, which is a big part. But no, seriously, it's 1 more year. I want to play, but I also want to be there as well for Fifey and sort of be that the player that sort of you can liaise with the coach as well. And if things aren't going so well, I can be that honest voice and say, look, just letting you know, and vice versa as well. So I think it's going to be a exciting season for sure.
We can't forget that you're still a young man too, and I was going to say something about the fact that our defenders seem to be dropping like flies at the moment, and it'd be very interesting to see what might happen if someone gave you the old tap on the shoulder at some point in the next couple of years. But don't forget that you're still a young guy, and you shouldn't be thinking about hanging up the boots anytime soon, mate. I want to talk about the COVID season though in the NPL. It was all very weird. Not that you guys would have cared, given how everything panned out, but you've been around the place, played at many clubs, obviously at a professional level. This must have been one of the weirdest experiences you've had. I mean, a season being disrupted for as long as it was due to this virus that's obviously going around the entire globe. Talk to us about what that was like, and also the secret to the club's success last season. I know you briefly mentioned, getting behind Fifey and everyone sort of realigning their focus, but during such a weird time, it's a testing thing for players to really focus and come back after probably not playing at their best to win the entire thing. So how did all that come about behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I think when you have, so for 7 years, Campbelltown have basically had the core of the squad have sort of stayed the same. And I mean, you look at the first win that Campbelltown had 8 years ago or whatever it was. The players that were there, you had these Jake Hallidays, you had Pishkineri, Sean Harvey. I think Dion Kirk might have been there at the time. You had all these young boys, 18, 19 years old. Mark Marino, I think, might have even been there. That all they've all stayed at the club. And what Dad was able to do was every year just bring in 1 or 2 players just to reinforce the squad. But when you've got young quality players, there's no need to say, well, I'm going to bring in someone else that's in your position, because you've already got the quality there. And that's something else that a lot of coaches will do. They'll see someone, they'll say, great player, I'm just going to bring him in, and all of a sudden the team's just disrupted. What you had before is no longer working. Players are now unhappy because you've brought someone else in. They might be a great player, but it can upset the dynamics of the team. So the squad that we had last year was very, very similar to the squad that we had the year before. And again, the year before was very similar to the squad that we had the year before that. So when times got tough, and then when Fifey came in, basically the hard work had already been done for 7 years. The boys knew how to play. So Fifey's message was, you know how to play. We've done it for 7 years. You've trained 3 to 4 nights a week for 7 years. We're not going to try and fix something that's broken. Let's just go back to the basics. Go back to how we played, how we pressed before. And all I'm here to do is just to support you guys. And I thought that was the best thing that he could have done. So yes, you look at COVID and, something that you couldn't plan for. Well, we were lucky enough that we already had a foundation there that didn't need changing. And in terms of how hard it was, yeah, it was tough. The season went for over 12 months. So we started pre-season in November, and our grand final was midway through December. So it was over 12-month season, and it felt like it as well. By the end, we were all over football. Trust me, it was a long season, and even now it's coming back for pre-season, it was a lot harder to get up and motivated to go do some runs at Benithan Park than it was in previous years. But it's all good now. We're all back and ready now.
I understand that fully well, but the general punter probably doesn't understand how much harder it is when you're not in that professional mindset anymore for a season to drag on like that. Very testing for people at semi-pro level, especially someone without the kind of experience you've got. So, obviously it changes a lot when it's semi-professional, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we had everyone in the team has a full-time job. So, we would be coming from work straight to training, and the club were great to us. Every team in the state got pay deductions. Most were about that 50%. So you're playing for 50% of what you agreed on at the start of the year, if that. And the boys just got on with it. It's a testament to the players, and not just at Campbelltown. I'm talking in general, the whole NPL, the whole state league. Some clubs I know, they got paid nothing at all. And they just got on with it. They played, and that shows so much more than, it could have been very easy for players just to say, well, I've got other things that are important in my life right now. I don't need to be coming here 3 nights a week still in the pouring rain for over 12 months, and other clubs, not even making finals, and very, very tough season. And to all the players, everyone, and coaches, and clubs as well, because, we can't forget that the clubs sacrificed a huge amount as well. We say that we had to take pay cuts. Well, clubs, they suffered financially as well. So everyone, the whole football community were terrific, outstanding for the whole of last year.
Very well said, Daniel. I want to talk about how things are going at the moment. So obviously preparing to go for that 4-peat, which is going to be an extraordinary effort if you guys can pull it off. I've got to ask you, is there pressure or a strong element of pressure on you guys to do that? Because I did mention before, I don't really think, and I think this is a general view, that there's really not anyone anywhere near the level that you guys have been able to maintain for so long. So internally, are you guys trying to put pressure on yourselves to not think about who you're actually on the park against, and just to ensure that you keep those standards in place and that you can pull this off? Because, I mean, if you can, I don't see anyone ever matching it, possibly in my lifetime. And I know that sounds like a massive stretch, but it's very, very hard to win one, let alone 4 in a row.
Yeah, the pressure comes from ourselves. We've, and I know this might sound like a cliche as well, but every game that we go into, the pressure is always from ourselves to keep our standard. And we know that when I first came to the club, we just won the first championship. And I remember the message from Dad at the time was, well, everyone's going to be out to get you. Every game will be a grand final. And it was like the first 10 games where it was like 10 grand finals in a row. Didn't matter who we played against. It was like a 1-0 win we lost a lot of games. Well, we didn't get a lot of great results in those first 10 games because it was just relentless pressure and everyone trying to, prove a point against us. And then we sort of got over that hump after the 10 games and then we went on, and I don't think we lost in the second half of the season, or if we did, it was, maybe one game or two max. Then last year was exactly the same. Every single game was a grand final. Modbury Jets, the biggest example for us, or for me, was we played them in round 4, and they destroyed us. They beat us 1-0, but they bullied us. We were second to every ball. We didn't take our chances. They took theirs. They had energy. We had no energy. We were missing passes. They weren't. So if you're watching that game, you would have thought that Modbury were the team that have just won 2 championships in a row, and we didn't know what we were doing. Now, I watched Modbury after that a couple of games, and it was a complete different team. So the intensity that other teams have been playing at against us in the last couple of years has been extremely high, and it's not going to change this year. That's for sure. Everyone's going to be out to get us again, and we welcome that. It's going to be a tough, really tough season. I think, like you said, 3 is extremely hard. I think 4 will be. I think it'll be really, really difficult. But like you said, I'm going to play with a straight bat. I think, yes, maybe to the outsider, you might think, yep, Campbelltown, class above, or however you might have described it. But for us, we see every game as, we just got there. We just won that game. Except for the grand finals against Comets the last 2 years, where I think we've really dominated and run away with the games. You look at us and Comets throughout the season, and they win 1, we win 1. We win 1-0. They win 2-1. Well, actually, that's a lie. Whenever they beat us by a bit. But it's always tough, and it's not as easy as people think. It's going to be another tough season, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, the Comets will have a bit to prove outside of SA Athletic Stadium when this season gets underway. It's going to be a very interesting season as well. We wish you all the best with that. And just before we go, tell us about, obviously, your ever-changing life. I do recall you telling us about you making the decision to study teaching all the way back during your first appearance on this show. Now you are working as a teacher at a very good school in St. Peter's. Tell us how it's all going.
Yeah, brilliant. Couldn't have written the script any better. I wanted to transition into teaching as soon as I could. Once deciding to stop professional football, I knew I had 2 years, so I wanted to play at an NPL level for 2 years and do my best. So we've won 2 championships in those 2 years. I've finished my degree in that time, and I was lucky enough to get offered a full-time job here straight away. So I finished my degree in November, and I've started here in term 1. So I'm loving it. I'm also coaching the year 8-9s here at St. Peter's as well. So I'm really enjoying that. It's something different. It's longer days. Training isn't just the only thing that I do now. I'm here for a lot longer, and then I'm off to training at Campbelltown as well. And then we have training as well before school here, so a lot longer days, but really enjoyable.
Excellent stuff, Daniel. That's a very privileged year 8, year 9 group that you've got there. We wish you all the very best this season in the NPL. We'll be seeing a lot of you, of course, one of the staples of Campbelltown. It's going to be very interesting to see how it all goes. Great to check in with you again. Always fantastically well spoken, mates. And we wish you all the best with everything on and off the pitch in 2021.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for watching, guys.